So today we're going to be recreating the Wanderlust logo at the top of the page. There are limitations in what Gravit can do, but we're going to do our best to come up with a variation that still has a similar look and feel while finding tools that have a workaround in comparison to Adobe Illustrator. To start out, we're going to be using the pen tool to help draw the zigzag lines for the waves. With the pen tool, I'm going to start out by clicking a point, and I can hold shift to maintain a perfect 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to again hold shift to maintain that 45-degree angle going downward. And I'm going to repeat this back and forth, going up and down to maintain consistency through the line. You'll see that Gravit does well to show you that it's aligning to the prior points. You just have to make sure to hold shift as you are trying to align it. Once we get one zigzag line, we can look to repeat them down the page so we don't have to keep drawing these over and over again. And we're going to draw a line about 26 points over. So if I count from the bottom, so I can actually undo the last one, but we have a zigzag pattern going all the way over. 13 points on the bottom, 13 points on the top. Once I have it drawn out, I'm going to click back on my pointer tool, the black arrow. And with the object selected, I'm going to go over to our appearance section. But right now, because we have the pointer tool, we actually do not get the option to modify our anchor points. We actually need to make sure that we're selected on the sub-select, the white arrow. And when I click and drag over them, you're going to see that the appearance now shows 4 different options for the joint setting, in which if we choose the mirrored joint setting, it will automatically give a curve between the anchor points. So when I click on it and click off, now you see that we've created this wave shape going through the design. And if I want to match the original Wanderlust logo a little bit better, I can look to select out again with my pointer tool, select the whole thing, and then squeeze this down a little bit just to flatten out the waves so it has a little bit more connection to the original design. But once I have the one wave created, I'm going to look to duplicate. Either I can hit Control C, Control V, which is copy and paste, or I can hold down Alt on the Microsoft keyboard or Option on a Macintosh keyboard. When I click and drag downward, I'm going to begin holding shift so it stays aligned. Now that I have 2 of them, I'm going to select both of those and do Control C, Control V again. I can slide this downward. If I need to nudge these a little bit, I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to slightly nudge this back into place so it's a little bit more aligned. Or if I select all of these together, I can use the alignment tool . So again, I want to now copy these down below to create the 5 different waves that sit below each other. I can do Control C, Control V, which is copy and paste, or I can hold down Alt on a Microsoft keyboard or Option on a Macintosh keyboard. Holding down Option, I can click and drag downward. And as I drag downward, I'm going to hold Shift so it maintains alignment to the waves above. If it gets out of alignment, because you let go too early, you can always redo or use the arrow keys on the keyboard to adjust. But make sure to let go with the mouse first and then let go Shift. So once we have one wave created, I'm going to look to create a duplicate. I can do Control C, Control V, makes a copy, and then I can click and drag downward. As I drag down, I'm going to hold Shift to try maintaining alignment between the one above it. And I can use my arrow keys as well, just to nudge it into place. Once I have one of the 2 waves created, I'm going to duplicate this again, Control C, Control V. And again, use the arrow keys to nudge this down into place. And we need 5 waves, so one more, Control C, Control V. And just using the arrow keys to place it down. So now that we've created the waves for our design, we're going to look to add in the other elements. To start out with, I'm going to create a rectangle shape at the bottom for our Wanderlust section. I'm going to click and drag with the rectangle tool from the top navigation, one over from where the pointer tool is. And if you see that we've created a gray box, we need to modify this gray box so that we're only seeing the black outline and transparent on the inside. So while it's still selected, I'm going to go over to the right side navigation where it says fills. I'm going to change where the gray color is. I can eliminate out the gray color completely by clicking on the toggle visibility. It will put a dash through that little eye icon, hiding that color. And then I'm going to add a border. And I want to maintain a thickness between all the different lines. The big thing is that we maintain consistency for all the different elements. So I'm going to up this to 3 pixels. You can type it in and hit enter. I can always modify the alignment, make it a little bit larger if I need. But now that we have that rectangle, we're going to look to place in the text for Wanderlust. To create the text for Wanderlust, I'm going to click on the capital T icon, the text tool at the top navigation. And I'm going to draw a text box going across our rectangle that we've created. You see it's your text here. If I want to take a look at modifying any of my text, I can look at the right side where it says Appearance. Currently, I have Archivo Narrow selected as my font. I can always click on the drop down and select out various fonts if I'm not happy with this. For right now, I'm just going to go with the standard Archivo font. It maintains a relative same thickness as we're using for the strokes. And I can type in Wanderlust. If you'd like to modify the arrangement of the text, I want to create a little bit more spacing similar to the original design. I can go over back to our appearance section for the text. I'm going to reduce the size of the text down to about 37 pixels. And where we see the spacing section, I can see the character spacing. The character spacing is the space between the letters themselves. So I can actually up the spacing for the text. And I just want to get it to fit closer to the edge of the box. So about 0.1 should be enough. If I need to modify this a little bit more, I can type in specifically instead of 0.1, I can type in 0.08. And you see that it's just nudges the letters a little bit closer together, but still maintains the distance between the letters themselves. I'm going to slide this downward now, so it's not cutting into the other designs at the top. If you ever mess up, you can simply hit Control Z to undo. Now that I've shifted the design a little bit lower, I'm going to look to now build out the sun, mountains, and tree elements. To start out with, I can do a horizontal line that goes above the waves. I can align it. You can see how Gravit uses alignment already. I can click a point with the pen tool, go over to the right side, click another point, and it should maintain that same 3 pixel thickness for the design. To end the line itself, you can simply hit escape on your keyboard. Now we're going to look to create the sun, that arch shape. So I'm going to click over on our ellipse tool at the top navigation. With the ellipse tool, I'm going to draw out an ovular shape. So with the ellipse tool, I'm going to look to draw an arch shape representing the body of the sun. I'm going to start again aligned with the overall design. I can click and drag to create that half circle or that full circle. If I need to nudge or modify this line, I can always slide the shape upward with the pointer tool. Or I can use the arrow keys to slightly nudge it to the proper location that I want. Now that we have the arch shape, we're going to look to cut this along this horizontal line. We want to make sure that we still have the circle selected, and then we're going to go over to the knife tool at the top navigation. With the knife tool, we're going to just follow along with this horizontal line. I can click and drag going across. It will only affect the circle that we have selected because nothing else is selected. But just click and drag across. And now when I click on my pointer tool and I go to select the bottom half of the circle, you see that it only selects the bottom half. So I can delete that out, and now we have the arch for our sun. Next, we're going to look to create our mountains. With our mountains, we're going to be using the pen tool as well. So once we've created the sun shape, we're going to click on the pen tool to draw out the mountains for our design. For the mountains of the design, I'm going to just draw a triangular shape, just getting the vertical line going up and the line coming down. And click a point. And I'm going to hold shift to maintain a 45-degree angle. I can always modify the thickness of the mountain afterwards, but I want to make sure that I have it parallel or equal on both sides. Then I can hit escape to end the line. I'm going to go back to the pointer tool. With the pointer tool, I'm going to scale this mountain inward, grabbing from the right side. I can also use the arrow keys to nudge it into place. Then I'm going to look to duplicate this mountain to create the smaller ones on the sides. Control C, Control V. I'm going to scale this down slightly while holding shift. So I can look to scale this duplicate downward. So I'm going to slide this duplicate over to the right side and then scale it down from the top to shrink it down. So I'm going to scale this down while holding shift to shrink down the mountain. We don't need to have it as large as the one in the middle. We're going to scale this down by holding shift and clicking and dragging downward. You want to make sure to let go with the mouse first. So once we duplicate the first triangle, we're going to look to scale down the second triangle over on the right side. I can hold shift, make sure to let go with the mouse first so it scales down proportionally. It doesn't necessarily have to match this perfectly. We're making just minor adjustments to make it work for us. I'm going to now select the mountain over on the right side and again use the knife tool. This time I'm going to be cutting the right side that overlaps with the larger mountain. I can click back on my pointer tool to select the bottom portion that got cut, hit backspace. I can nudge this slightly over to the side so that it aligns perfectly with the mountain. And then I'm going to duplicate this mountain and place a copy over on the far side. Control C, Control V. And I want to flip this object so it faces the opposite direction. I can use the flip horizontal. And then I can slide this over to the left again aligning it to the larger mountain. We can look to put in the zigzag shape at the top of the mountain with the pen tool. I'm going to click a point. Again, I can hold shift to make sure that this maintains alignment. And then escape to end the line. If I need to nudge this line a little bit, I can always use the arrow keys again, just to make sure it doesn't run off of the mountain. I can do the horizontal lines that I see within the design going on the outside of the smaller mountains. I'm going to look to just do one and then duplicate this. Hit escape to end the line. I can nudge it using the right arrow key. Then I can hold down Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac to create a duplicate and have these lines run down the side of the mountain. Once we have the lines over on the left mountain, I can select all of these, holding shift to click on each one. Then I can hit Control C, Control V, and I'm going to flip these horizontally so they face opposite direction. And I can click and drag them over to the right while holding shift to place them over on the other side. When it comes into drawing the trees, I'm going to click on the pen tool. We need to first begin drawing our vertical line. I can hold shift to maintain a perfect straight line. Hit escape to end the line. Then I'm going to use the pen tool starting at the top point. I'm going to move down to the right. This time, instead of creating that 45-degree angle, I'm going to look to click and drag to create the curve for my tree. And I can release. Now I have that curve that I want. I'm going to look to duplicate this. I can duplicate this holding down Option, click and drag downward. And if you see the original design, we have the 4 length tree having the branches, 4 branches on the right and 4 branches on the left, and then the smaller trees have 3 branches each. So once I have the 4 on one side, I can do Control C, Control V, flip horizontally, and then shift these over to the left side. If I need to shrink up this line if it's too tall, I can scale down the bottom trunk. I'm going to select the entire tree, hit Control C, Control V, and slide this over to the right. This time I'm going to take off the bottom 2 limbs and scale down the trunk again so that we get the shorter 6 branch tree. So these are a little bit big when I'm looking at the design. I can look to scale these down a little bit. I'm going to select over, click and drag over the shapes, and grab the top corner and look to scale these down. And then I want to group each one just so they stay together as a cohesive piece. So I'm going to click and drag over the larger tree and click on the group at the top navigation, or you can hit Control G on a Windows machine or Command G on a Mac. That way when I select it, it selects the whole tree and I'm not selecting individual pieces, like clicking and dragging that off the original tree. So again, clicking and dragging over it, I can hit Command G or just go up to the button at the top, Group Items. But now that we have the tree grouped, I can look to add in the 4 smaller trees. Control C, Control V. Pull this down into the proper location. Again, if I feel like it's too large, I can look to scale it down, click and drag it downward, holding Shift. Then I'm going to duplicate this tree, Control C, Control V. Slide over to the left side of the large mountain. I can hold down Alt and click and drag over to the other side. Then do the larger tree in the middle. Place the larger tree in the middle, and I can scale this down as well if I feel it's too tall. Holding Shift and grab the top middle area. So we're going to look to now create the cloud shape. For the cloud shape, I'm going to be using the Shapes tool. With the Ellipse tool, I can draw 3 overlapping circles. I'm going to have the one in the middle a little bit larger than the ones on the sides. I'm going to select all 3 of those circles and then go up to the top navigation, and under the section for the combined shapes or create compound shapes, I'm going to go to Union, where it combines into one, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle for the bottom of my cloud shape. I can draw selecting both the circles that I've already created or merged together and the rectangle that I've just created below it. And this time, instead of doing the union, we're going to do the subtract, where it cuts out the object in front, leaving that flat bottom for our cloud. I'm going to scale this down make it fit better for our design. It doesn't necessarily have to match this perfectly, but if it does come into alignment of hiding it behind the mountains, I can look to use the knife tool again. With the knife tool, I'm going to select the clouds, click on the knife tool, click and drag downward, matching the angle of the mountain. Then with the pointer, I can select the left side, delete that out, and now it appears that the cloud is sitting behind the mountain. So they don't necessarily have to be exactly aligned, and we don't necessarily have to have as many clouds as we do with the original logo, but we're just recreating a similar idea, has the same concept, but less can be just as good as the original design. If I wanted to put another cloud over to the other side, further out, I can duplicate out the cloud, hide it off the side of the mountain again, select the cloud, use the knife tool. Again, we're just going to cut it down following the line of the mountain shape. Then use the pointer tool to select the left side of the cloud so it sits behind our mountain. Finally, the last element that we're going to look to do is create the sunburst. These lines that extend past the original arch shape. I'm going to create a little bit more space, moving the original image. So to create this arch shape, we need to first build out the vertical line that's going to start our circular lines for that burst of light. So with the pen tool, I'm going to go to the top, towards the top tip of the mountain. I'm going to click a point and go downward towards the bottom of our logo, Wanderlust. So we have the vertical line that's going to begin our design. I can hit escape to end the line. Then I'm going to shift this line upward to the open space, just so we have more room to work with. With this vertical line, we're going to make a copy, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to rotate this to the right so that we have that crossing pattern. Then we're going to select both those two lines, Control C, Control V. This time we're going to grab from this white circle at the top. This will allow us to rotate. And as I rotate, I'm going to hold shift to maintain a 45-degree angle, so it goes right in between the two lines. Then we're going to select all four lines. With all four lines selected, again, I'm going to hit Control C, Control V. This time we are going to have to start eyeing it in between the open gaps. So I'm going to rotate to the right, do my best to align it right to the middle, release. So I'm going to look to duplicate, Control C, Control V. Now I'm going to rotate these lines, do my best to align to the middle in between the gaps, and release. Now I have 8 lines crossing each other. I'm going to select all 8 lines, Control C, Control V. Again, grabbing that white circle, rotate to the right, going right in between the gap. Then we're going to do this one more time, selecting all the lines. Control C, Control V. Grabbing that white circle at the top, placing it in the gap area, creating the sunburst that we need for our design. So if we take a look at the original design, there's a gap between the sunburst and the body of the sun. So what we're going to do to create this gap, we're going to select the body of the sun for our design. I'm going to make a copy, Control C, Control V. I'm going to look to scale this up, holding Shift. So we're creating a little bit of space in between the two sections. And I can look to actually scale this a little bit more, not holding Shift, but just creating a little bit more space in the top and middle. And this is going to be the gap that we have between our sun and the burst of light. So I'm going to move this shape towards the top of our burst of light. I can place it at the midway point on the design. So I'm going to grab this and place it on the midway point along our design. So I'm going to look to place this on the midway point of the burst of light. So I'm going to look to take this half circle and place it midway on our burst of light. You can see that it's aligned in the middle. We have this 0.2 on each side. I'm going to take this arch that we've created the separation for and place it on midway on our sunburst. With the pointer tool, I'm going to look to click and drag the arch, that half circle, up to the top half of the burst of lines that we have. You can see the alignment of Gravit, making sure that's 0.2 on each side. And with this arch, we need to now cut off the bottom portion of these lines. To cut off the bottom portion of these lines, I'm going to look to draw out a section that's going to cover up the bottom half. So I can click on the pen tool, going to the bottom left anchor point. I'm going to draw a shape around the outside bottom portion. And then close it up to the right side. As you see, it fills in with gray, but we need to move this object on top of the beams of light. To move this on top of the beams of light, I'm going to click on the pointer tool, and I can right click on the background area, that gray area, and I can change the arrangement, bring to front, so that's sitting in the front. And we're going to change the fill color to white over on the right side. I click on the options down the bottom for the white box, and I'm going to look to eliminate out the border stroke, clicking on the toggle visibility, eliminating that out. And we can see that now covers up the large portion of the lines. I can also use the subselect to modify the anchor points if I want to hide these little corners so that we're not seeing that one side of the line. But with this shape selected, I'm going to select both the lines and the white mask. I'm going to look to group this together. So it's one. I'm going to look to shift this back into the location. And we need to now send this back to the background. So I'm going to click on the object, right click, and arrange, send it back. And we see that we've now created the sunburst for our design, and we've recreated the original logo.